Hello there and welcome back to the studio. Today in today's episode we are going to continue to develop this painting. The entire painting is dry and it's now ready to continue to work on. So the face still has the local color stage, whereas the rest of it is still in the underpainting stage. So the face is in one stage, the rest of it is in another stage. And that's just how it is with the larger canvas. You know, you can't work sometimes you can't really just work the entire thing every single sitting. And so on the palette here, we've got titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin crimson permanent, cadmium red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow deep, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black, and neo McGill medium. And if you would like to know or purchase the same type of materials that I'm using, I have the paints listed in the description box down below. I do have more paints in there than on the palette, so what you have in the description box down below is pretty much the array of all of the oil paints that I use. So if you would like to purchase the same type of materials I'm using, I have affiliated Amazon links. If you click on the link, it'll redirect you to the Amazon page where you can feel free to make the purchase or to scroll through the oil painting materials. And if you do decide to do so, Amazon will pay me a small amount, so thank you so much in advance if you decide to do that. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to mix up the color value web. So you know what I'm probably going to do right now, right? I'm going to mix the alizarin crimson permanent, the ivory black, the burnt umber, pretty much whatever is dark in value here, I guess minus the ultramarine blue. And what I'm doing actually is I'm using a new brush, or what I'm using is a new brush. It's a Robert Simmons bristle brush. So now I'm moving up in the value range, and I'm using the cadmium red and the yellow ochre, and now cadmium orange. So anyway, I'm using a different bristle brush. This one was highly recommended to me by Paul Wilson, an artist in the Hood College Portrait Group, you know, the painting group that I go to Friday mornings. So I'm going to test it out, and if I like this brush, I will create another Amazon affiliate link just so you can, you know, use a bristle brush that I like to use. So these paints were actually taken from my freezer. They have been in the freezer for a long time. I have a feeling that this titanium white is probably, it probably has become a mix of flake white and titanium white. So I'm not the most organized person today. But you know, it's okay. Doesn't always have to be so perfectly organized. So I'm mixing up a closer to a more pinkish color value web. So that is, I'm going to use more of the alizarin crimson permanent and the cadmium red in the lighter areas. And now we're going to just make our way back down. A little more alizarin, sap green, just to calm down the heat. Alright, so now we have our color value web, and don't worry, I'm going to show you the photo reference very soon. Now what I'm going to do is, with a larger brush, I think over here, I'm going to mix up a background color. So I'm going to use the ivory black, sap green, ivory black, sap green, a lot of paint, burnt umber, and this is just a convenient spot really on the palette to have the background color, just so it doesn't get in the way of the color value web. That we'll use this primarily for, I think, like the neck and the hands and all of that. And then if I'm feeling ambitious, we'll get into the clothing, but no promises there, because that is a lot to do in one day. So the burnt umber, alrighty then, some more of the yellow ochre, a little more neo McGill medium, and I think what we'll do is we'll start off with the background, okay? So I have a little dilemma here. So I kind of knew that this would happen. The the layer of paint here started to settle and kind of fade in. Now I read online that there are two reasons for this. Either my ground was too absorbent, which it probably was because it already had a layer of oil paint on it, or I used too much medium. I remember purposefully not wanting to use too much medium just so this wouldn't sink in so much, but oh well, that's okay. Let me show you what to do when that happens. So just using the medium, okay, Neo McGilt medium. I highly suggest Liquin or Neo McGilt medium. You could use the Stand Oil to mineral spirits mixture. Just make sure only a little bit of the Stand Oil if you do that. But not to confuse things, I'm just using Neo McGilt medium, and see that already it's starting to bring back the original value. Now I have been doing some more research into this, you know, the fading out thing. I get this question a lot, and well, I have some paintings where obviously it faded a lot between stages, but then, you know, at the end when I oiled the entire thing out one last time, you know, after so many layers, you know, the painting, it was fine. So I'm talking in particular about classical painting, because with Alla Prima, you know, it doesn't, if it fades like that, you just retouch varnish it or something. But when you're working between layers like this, it's kind of important to pay more attention into, you know, how the painting dries over time. So anyway, I've done some research, and like I said, the research says that either, you know, the ground is too absorbent or you use too much medium. Now obviously right now this would be too much medium, right? Just because I'm oiling out, and I even read that it's probably not a good idea to oil out so much. So what I'm going to do in the future, you know, this is just how I was taught. This is how I was taught to oil out between sittings. Not always oiling out, but this is just how I was taught. So what I'm going to do is just you know, continue to oil out, but in the future I will do my very best to use less mediums in the preliminary stages. Now you can see that the original value is fine, and then after the painting is done and it fades again after 6 months to a year, you put the final varnish. I usually use Damar varnish, and it's good. So I don't know really, I mean, I'm not, you know, a chemist or anything when it comes to that. Did I really forget to put the blue for this eye? Oh my gosh. I think I did. Or did I not? I don't know. I think I might have forgot to put the blue for this eye, which is hilarious. But anyway, now that the oil is back into here, we now have the true value that this was when it was wet. So now we're going to go in with the background color. Now, with the photo reference, you know, the background is pretty dark, like really, really dark. And it's only a step lighter than the hair, which is very similar to this. I just don't want the edge to be so, whatchamacallit. Yeah, I don't want the edge to be so whatchamacallit. I don't want the edge to be sharp, especially with the hair. So now I will say, I should probably link the resources that I used to, you know, look at the, like, why colors fade and stuff like that. If I remember, I will link the website, though I hear YouTube isn't really that friendly when it comes to putting links of other websites, so I probably won't. I encourage you to do the research, to do as much research as you can on materials on your own. You know, just because painters like me will tell you one thing, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's 100%. It just means that we're telling you what we think at that given time and at that given moment, you know? I always want to be honest with you. Alright, so now this is going to be a pretty tedious and repetitive thing. So I got one more thing to talk about, and then I'm just going to do like a little edit, and you're going to see the entire background, or at least the green portion covered. So I've had... you know, this is a new palette, right? So I asked for some names on this palette. I like Casper the Friendly Palette, you know, because it kind of looks like a ghost, like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I like that name. I also read something about the, you know, persistence, and I have a lot of persistence. I try to have a lot of persistence. Maybe sometimes I just have too much persistence. So Persistence is also a good name for this palette, but I don't know. This palette, as of now, is still unnamed. You know, I named my other palette Lumpy just because it's very lumpy and I thought it was a proper name for it. But if you have, you know, any more suggestions for the name of this palette, as of now, I do really like Casper, the Friendly Palette, and I also like Persistence. Just, you know, Persistence as the name. I also like that as well. So if you like Casper, the Friendly Palette, please comment down below. Or if you have any other suggestions for the name of this palette here, you can go ahead and comment down. Alright, so I said what I wanted to say about that. And I'm now going to just cover the rest of the green shape. Alright, now I do realize that there is a cast shadow here in the photo reference that's ever so slight. I don't know if it's glaring too much from, you know, the angles where you are, but there's quite a lot of glare. I tried my best to use less medium to cover the background, which will also mean that this will take much longer to dry, but you know. Alright, so now the ivory black, a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to try not to add any more medium. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the paint that's already on here to mix with this value. Okay, so I'm going to put in the cast shadow a little less, you know, noticeable. Remember, cast shadow. So this is a shadow that is casted from, you know, basically the light hitting the model, and then there's the shadow. You know what I'm talking about, right? So I know I should be using a different brush, but this is just the largest bristle brush that I had on hand. Alright, so again, I don't want that cast shadow to be too prominent. You know, even just a glimpse of a shadow like this will work. Will work just fine. So that's enough for the large green shape. What I'm going to do is clean off this brush, and we're going to clean it with the odorless mineral spirits, because we're going to be transitioning into you know, some more colors. So just the odorless mineral spirits, just kind of letting it run through. Now this is one thing that I like about, now I'm using traditional oils, okay? These are traditional oils. This is odorless mineral spirits. One thing that I like about water mixables, as opposed to these, what I'm using right now, traditional oil paints, is the cleaning. It's so much easier to clean the brushes with the water mixable. Don't get me wrong, this is odorless mineral spirits, okay? Don't think that I'm confusing it. But anyway, yeah, see how much harder it is to clean this. You know, I'm thinking of trying turpentine, you know, the original one. I don't know. Please comment down below if you do use turpentine, and how, you know, how does it differ with traditional, you know, odorless mineral spirits. But again, I'm guessing most of us don't use real turpentine. But I don't know. Just a curiosity. I think that's clean enough. And now we're going to mix a kind of dark red tone. So we're going to use the alizarin crimson permanent. And again, I'm going to mix in this area of the palette just so I don't get in the way of the flesh tone. And don't worry, we'll get into some of the flesh tones soon. I just want the background to be, I just want to get the background out of the way. So the yellow ochre, burnt umber. And I realize I'm going to get into some trouble, you know, mentioning that, you know, the color started to fade in the hair. Again, not to scare anyone off, you know, with the technique. I've seen plenty of extremely, you know, well trained artists oiling out their paintings, okay? It's not like it's a bad thing. I've seen painters far beyond my ability, such as my teacher, Paulden Hamilton. I also have witnessed him oil out his painting as well, okay? So if people that are a million times better than me in terms of technique are doing it, then, you know, we're good, okay? So the alizarin crimson permanent, the burnt umber, and why don't we just flavor it a little bit with the cadmium orange Why not? And we're gonna put this shape over here. So already, see, that's a little too, I wanted to say that's a little too light in value. So I'm gonna use the alizarin crimson, the ultramarine blue. Let's try that again. So alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue. I think it's pretty close, a little darker. Alizarin crimson permanent, more ultramarine blue. And again, we are in the perceptual color stage, which means that we are prioritizing the average color within a given area. The next stage after this, after all these shapes are covered and the painting dries, will be the perceptual color stage, which means we will go in and look for individual color relationships, and then we will make the color mixtures more advanced. Like in yesterday's video. Yesterday, I was working with the water mixable oil paints, and I was really surprised at the quality of the colors in the perceptual color pass. Stage. I really didn't think that that the water mixables would do that well, and that's just because of my own bias as a traditional oil painter. A lot of traditional oil painters will stick with the materials that have been working for them for a while. I, however, am an explorer. I love to explore different materials, different techniques. I'm going to soften this edge a little bit more. Even softer. Now that's a nice soft edge. So now what we want to do is make a darker red. So ivory black, alizarin crimson permanent. Okay. See, notice how I didn't reach for my Neo McGilp. That's right. Trying to use less medium. That does mean this, like I said, this is going to take a while to dry. The reds in particular take forever to dry. And we did finish a painting, like, I don't know, a couple days ago now. So, yeah. Looks like we're going to have to start another one, because that still life that you saw yesterday, that was actually filmed a couple of days ago. That was filmed on Saturday. And today, what's today? Today, right? How do I keep track of the days? Today, it's Tuesday for me. And that painting is still not dry. Okay, so you do the math. So yeah, I'm going to be looking for another painting to start. I did film at the Howard County portrait group, the portrait group that I showed you in the video where I was talking about how I had a bad day. Unfortunately, the clips, I don't think they're good enough for me to, make a formal video about it, or if you can even call it formal anymore. But I do have some new pictures, and I do want to start a large double portrait, so I don't know, I'm thinking a still life, another double portrait, I don't know, but just know, since we finished the painting recently, we're going to go ahead and start another one relatively soon. So that should be enough for that shadow. Oh, that was not smart. So this area here, I want to cover it as well, but it's closer to the greenish range. In fact, I think this is like going to be an ultramarine blue kind of color. And this is the largest brush I have. Okay, it's all right. Let's clean this brush now. So again, with the odorless mineral spirits. So in case anyone wanted to know how to cover a lot of surface with one brush, yeah, this is how you do it. You definitely want to clean off the brushes between complementary colors. That's definitely recommended. So just tapping the bristles onto the paper towel. You can see how it's kind of like dripping inward. So this is kind of how I do this. I just wanted to show you more close up. So I kind of run the bristles through like this, kind of like a strainer. If you're straining some spaghetti or something, I don't know. I'm not coming up with any good analogies today. And that's pretty good. See how we can see the bristles again? Just wanted to show you even more. And if only I could be like Bob Ross, I would probably just like smack the, yeah, not a good idea. So as mentioned before, I think that I'm going to use more of the ultramarine blue in that shape. So I'm just going to mix kind of like right over here. I don't want to get too close to the edge, then I'm going to get paint everywhere. So I think this works just fine over here. Again, I really do enjoy having all this extra space here. It's quite convenient. So ultramarine blue, ivory black. How about we throw in some sap green? Or, yep, a little more ultramarine blue. And in case you're wondering how I preserve these paints in the freezer, I did mention that I put them in the freezer. I did not put this palette in the freezer. I wish I had a, freezer large enough for that. What I did was I just took the paints off with a palette knife, put it on a little sheet of glass, and then put the little sheet of glass in the freezer. That's what I did. A little more ultramarine blue, ivory black, sap green. Okay, I think that's good. So we're going to start with the darker area. So let's suppose, I don't know, somewhere over here. Now I know for certain with a good like 98.56, okay, I'm joking, right? I can't be that specific, but I'm pretty certain that this will, when it dries, it will fade a little bit, which is okay because again, just like we did with this portion of the painting, we'll go back in and oil it out. And like I said, I've seen so many painters far better than me using this technique, oiling out. So I think we'll be okay. All right, so I'm purposefully going with the darker dark. Let me stand back for a second just to make sure it's not too dark. And I think it's okay. So I'm purposefully going in with this darker value to get the shadows taken care of and the accents, because like one form meets another and it creates an accent. So I'm trying to get these shapes in first. Okay, so now that I have all of that covered. Oh, maybe we'll cover this shape too. Okay, so now that I have all that covered, we're gonna go into the, whoops, see that's too much, but okay, some of the, let's mix over here. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but a little bit of a lighter tone, okay? And we're gonna kind of not press so hard. I actually want the transparency there to show through because we must protect the awesome factor. And the awesome factor is when you see traces of the underpainting underneath in your finished painting. You'll really, really want that, especially if you're using a classical technique. It's very rare these days to see this. And I'm really trying to give you the entire experience, as much of the experience as I possibly can on a daily basis, because this does take a long time. There is a lot of footage involved in this, and I know I probably tend to put most folks to sleep, but if you're still awake and listening to me, maybe you're even painting along with me, thank you so much. And remember to preserve the awesome factor. Always preserve the awesome factor. So that's how I'm preserving it, very, very lightly, okay? Very, very lightly with the brush stroke. We want to be as light as possible near the bottom. We have to preserve the awesome factor here, okay? Okay. All right. That should be about good. All right, so now we're going to move on to some of the flesh tones. I mean, that's why we mixed up the color value web. So I will be using these bristle brushes that I was talking about earlier. These are, what are they again? The Robert Simmons bristle brushes, highly recommended to me by Paul Wilson, my friend at the, I call him my mentor at the Hood College Portrait Group. And I call him my mentor because he has not only is his work incredible, I just took a bristle off of a brand new brush. Maybe that's not such a good thing, but actually, I mean, all of my brushes tend to lose bristles, and I think that just happens, even with the most high quality brushes. But in any case, yeah, my mentor, I call him my mentor, Paul Wilson. He's really not only just a really good painter, but you know, he gives me a lot of advice, you know, about layering. He always says, you know, restate your darks, or start off with the darks, you know, get the effective light by pushing the darks. And so, you know, that's why I started off with the dark of the background. And unknowingly, that's why I'm starting off with these darker tones here. You know, you practice something so much, you don't really have to think about it at some point, you know. And I am going to make these, well, you know, I can't say anything with 100% certainty, but my aim is to make these videos, you know, every single day, and to really make it feel like you're there painting. You know, I really want to bring this experience to you. This is a very rare art form these days, especially the traditional approach. And you know what Bob Ross did with Alla Prima, what Bob Ross did with painting in general, I find brilliant. I find it to be, you know, my largest motivator. And I really want to motivate other artists to pursue this type of painting, okay? I really do. It really does concern me, you know, and I mean, not to talk bad about any art or anyone, but what concerns me is what is going to happen with traditional painting in the future. Everett Raymond Kinsler, one of the greatest portrait artists of all time, recently passed away. Nelson Shanks also passed away in 2015, and I find those painters to be like the pinnacle, like really the old masters. Okay, we really did lose some old masters recently, and you know, what I really want to do, along with, you know, providing you with this footage every single day as much as possible, is I really want to motivate others to paint in this kind of way. This takes a lot of this, right? It takes a lot of thinking, and not to say that other art forms don't. It's just that this is a craft that I really feel is kind of endangered. I really want to bring this craft to you. That's why those of you that are helping me out with the Patreon, I'm really thankful for that support. And, you know, I'm not to pressure anyone, you know. You don't have to support me on Patreon, just the fact that you're here, you know, listening to me. Especially at this part of the footage, you know, when things kind of slow down and I'm looking at each area plane by plane. And this is the part that really slows down. Looking at this little plane here. And again, I'm using the average color, okay? I'm not really trying to, you know, try to get too much variation in the tone. It's tempting to try to do that, you know, because I see a much cooler note there. But I'm not going to try to, you know, focus on that too much. I'm trying to focus much more into the values using this local color. So we're building the color. So now it's actually time to move to a different brush, though I probably shouldn't have done that with this one. Okay, so we're going to have a different brush. So we're going to have a light brush and a dark brush. And again, this is a very subtle area right by the clavicle. So I have to be very cautious with this edge. And with the color, I mean, I'm kind of concerned with the color. I'm going to tint the color value web a little bit cooler. So I'm using sap green. Now this is risky, but I'm using sap green to tint it. I feel like it's just way too pinkish. And like I said, I want the average color within a given area. And just like this, we want to focus primarily with value, okay? And this is why it helps to have such a large brush. Such a large palette. Okay. A large palette. Okay. So I just recharged and tinted the color value web. It was just a little too warm. I felt like I was kind of giving her a sunburn on there. And of course this value. So sometimes I'll push a value too dark, such as here I push it too dark on purpose. Now I want to get, I want to get the angle of the clavicle, and I push this dark a little further just so that, I could come back in like this right here and move it, like shovel the paint and get a much softer edge. And the clavicles are definitely an area you want to be very careful with. A little can go a long way with the clavicles. And again, I'm working from the corners. A little more sap green. I do tend to go a little bit warmer. That's just my tendency. And that is just because, I'd rather go warmer than too cold. Because if I go too cold, I'll get kind of a zombie effect. Ultramarine blue. But this is actually pushing me to paint a little bit cooler. In fact, some of your suggestions have been to, one day try to push the other way. Instead of painting so warm all the time, try to, cool it down. I guess that's kind of what we're doing there. Now, just like with the face, you won't notice too big of a difference in the color because the burnt umber, the underpainting color, is quite warm. So you really won't notice too much of a change in the hue, which is expected. You'll notice much more of a change in the hue after this layer dries and we enter in the next stage, which will be the perceptual color stage. A little bit of a darker tone here for the suprasternal notch. Suprasternal notch is here, sorry. So this is the sternocleidomastoid going all the way down here, the neck muscle, one over here and one over there. So we're going to push the warmth down here. I feel like it was there in nature. I feel like the photograph is probably compressing that a little too much. And if we don't like the color that we're putting here, we can always change it. That's one of the major advantages to working in layers. A little bit lighter. And we're going to do the same kind of thing over here on the shoulder. Just kind of flattening it out. I guess we should move on to the arms now. Alright, so now we are at a close-up view and we're going to start to paint the arms. So since I suspect that the footage is already getting kind of long, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint one arm, so right around here, and then we're going to have a little cut and I'm going to paint this on my own, this arm, and then we'll go on from there to the hands. Though I am pretty curious, though, I have had some complaints about the videos being short, and I'm really, I'm just trying to figure this YouTube thing out. It's pretty difficult to figure out, especially, if you're a painter like me. And what I mean by that is that painting takes a long time, okay, especially classical painting. So I have had some complaints about the videos being too short, but in my mind, I'm just like, Well, let me explain this color real quick. So I switched brushes. So this is kind of a warm dark. I did use the cadmium red into the darker region of the flesh tones, though I'm very cautious not to try to paint in the reflected light too much, because that's going to be something for the next stage. So getting back to what I was talking about, so I'm going to continue to move these values lighter so we can proceed to model the form with value. But okay, so what I was talking about is, yeah, painting takes a very, very long time, and to have a successful YouTube channel, so successful in terms of views, because you know we need views to move forward, to bring in new people. You know, the thing is, I feel like if I produce videos that are too long, then people won't want to watch. But then when I change the, you know, try to edit it to be shorter, I get a lot of complaints, and I had even one fellow that I was really fond of that left, you know, just flat out said they would watch other videos as opposed to these, which I'm fine with. You know, you can watch whatever you want to watch. But what do you think? I mean, with the time of each episode, I was thinking anything above 30 minutes is a lot, like too much for a daily episode. And there are other factors that, you know, are going to matter, such as, you know, if I make a longer than, like, close to an hour a day, my computer may, like, kind of explode. So there are some limitations with technology. But anyway, what do you think? Do you watch my videos and paint at the same time? I'm talking to you directly. Now we're pushing the value over here. And again, my tendency is to push the warmth. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to push the warmth a little bit here. And maybe we'll get a cooler tone in here in the perceptual color stage. But yeah, I thought I would just talk to you about that, about the duration of the videos and what I'm trying to do with the videos. I've had some people get confused at what I'm trying to do. So what I'm trying to do is present this experience to you as often as possible. And for me, as often as possible is pretty much every day, every morning around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just because this is such a long and, you know, tedious thing. And I really want to present you with, you know, some of the life of the artist as well. You know, that's why I made that video about the, you know, unboxing the palette. That's why I make some videos, you know, filming to events to take photo references and things like that. Right? I'm really trying to modernize the painting video. You know, I'm trying to bring this into the 21st century. And it's very hard to do this. It's very hard to innovate when no one else in the past has done what you're trying to do. You know, who do you look up to? Right now, you know, the only person I could think of is the all-amazing Bob Ross. But now we're, you know, 21st century. In the era of vlogs and, you know, everything that's on YouTube. Alright, so I did push the value a little bit darker over here just so the form could turn a little bit, and I pushed it a little bit warmer, though not really much. This is pretty flat in the photograph. That's why I'm pushing that turn, because I know that in nature, you know, you would see this value turning. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this kind of thinking over here, and then we're going to return for the hands. And like I usually say, make sure to stand back as often as possible. So after standing back, I see that this is just like way too vague. I'm sure you noticed this before I did, but yeah, I'm missing this plane. I might have ended up taking it out. And one thing I always say, as opposed to, you know, making sure you stand back when you're working, when in doubt, blur it out. And the value here for the sternocleidomastoid, I'm going to actually bring down the value a little bit, just so it's not such an impact, such a sharp like angle there. I know I see it in the photo reference, but it's just bothering me now. And then after I resolve this, we'll get it to the hands. So I really want to lessen the severity of this angle. It just isn't, I don't know, it just doesn't settle well with me. So I'm going to get a fan brush, and there should be quite a lot of glare there. So after I do this, after I soften this, I'm going to try to reduce some of the glare, though it probably won't work just because I need to replace this fan brush. Yeah, that's not working. Anyway, now that I kind of blurred this out a little bit, I may need to retouch that later, but it's not bothering me as much now. So we are going to get into the hands. So I'm going to get a smaller brush, a little bit of Neo Medium, into the darker region of the palette with the Alizarin Crimson Permanent. And I'm going to restate the darks first. There's a darker little accent here underneath of the thumb. And we're going to have a dark accent over here. And I'm purposefully making the shape a little bit larger just because I know I'm going to come back into it and carve a more exacting shape. Luckily, I didn't have any coffee this morning, so that means my hand shouldn't be as wobbly. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with coffee. It's just usually when I drink coffee, my hand gets wobbly, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. I did kind of use something that I called the wobbly hand technique in the past. A little bit of a darker accent over here. Gotta make sure that these darks are in check. And just like in drawing, you want to have a simple straight line, straight lines and angles for things, but it's also an aesthetic thing too. If you push the angularity between shapes, it also kind of shows that you've had a kind of academic training, such as I have. I've done bark drawings in the past. I've done cast drawings and cast paintings. And I highly suggest you do those cast drawings and cast paintings, before, getting too involved with figurative work. Traditionally, that's how artists trained. They would do, several bark drawings or, careful linear drawings, and then move on to, drawing from plaster cast, painting from plaster cast, and then transferring that knowledge onto their figurative work. And, I'm feeling like I will most likely do a cast drawing or a cast painting video in the future, just to show you, if you haven't done any. It's kind of hard to find a cast. That's the other thing. Finding a cast. When you're doing a cast drawing or a cast painting, you really want the cast to be very matte. And there's a reason why certain casts are used, just because they are works of art on their own. A sculpture, like a Greek sculpture, is an idealized version, a conceptualized version of something. And imposing that kind of thought onto you is a very helpful thing. So yeah, I should probably be on the lookout for casts. A little darker accent here. So I put in a little bit of a warmer tone here just because I knew I would cut back into that shape eventually. And let's just get a sharper angle here. And of course I always seem to leave out this hand, so on the other hand we want to push this dark value. Okay, and then there should be a little accent underneath here. Okay, I think that's pretty good for the darks. Now we're going to go in for the halftones. I'm going to start with those pinkish colors first. Now I do have the camera fairly low because I've put the camera low and then I raised the canvas a little bit. Hopefully you can see these mixtures. I mean, I'm putting the palette like right in front of where the hand is. So hopefully you can see it. So with the hands, I usually like to start off with these dark accents, or dark warm accents for the knuckles, just to get some blood flow into the hands. And you know me, or I think you do, I struggle with hands a lot. So I think one thing that has helped me more recently is a more careful linear drawing there. Like we did a long time ago. Remember back when we first introduced this painting? I did spend a long time on the block-in stage, or the block-in in the underpainting stage. So now we're going to get a little bit warmer and more pink over here for the thumb. That ought to do it. Now we're going to put in the same kind of thinking, darker and warmer tones for the knuckles. One here, one here. You know, I probably should have split this into a separate episode with the hand, but again, I'm going to try to give you more footage as by popular request. Though it's really confusing because when I meet people in person, they usually tell me they wish they had the time to watch my video. So then, I don't know. I guess the thing to take out of this is you can't please everybody. A bit of a darker tone here. And then it's going to pick up lighter over here. Now the hue, I'm pushing the hue a little pinker. I don't want to push it too pink because then it won't seem to fit into the color scheme of the surrounding areas. So sap green, titanium white. So push the hue a little cooler. A little bit of a plane change there. And now I'm definitely relying on that color value web. I'm taking from it exclusively. And like I said, the ring here, I mean, we know what that ring means. It's a very important thing to put on the hand. But again, I really want the structure to exist underneath of the hand first. So we'll probably put that ring in there. Hopefully I remember to in the last stage. You know, like jewelry and tattoos and things like that, I usually hold off until the last stage, the selective render, or you know, like details or designs or something like that. So now there are some plane changes here to note. So right over there, let's use the darker brush for that. And instead of painting the vein right away, I'm going to paint this plane first. Then we're going to come back into this. So rather than painting, you know, like a squiggle for a vein, we're painting in a plane. So plane changes that will look like a vein. Lighter plane over here. And I think what I'm going to do, since I know for sure now that today's episode is getting long, so I'm going to continue to develop the hand here. And then I'm going to do this, since these are just the fingers, the phalanges, I'll paint that on my own. Then I'll show you the result. I'm going to push the light a little bit more on the ring finger. A little lighter over here. We want a little more nuance to this turning value. So I'm just kind of pushing the corner a little bit darker. And then I'm going to let that kind of fade. See that? How it makes it look much more, gives it more volume. It's going to be an even darker plane here. Now that is starting to look dimensional. Finally, we're getting a hand on how to paint hands. Or whatever. We're getting a handle on how to paint the hands. Still, that kind of sounds like a pun. I didn't mean it to be. I'm going to kind of blur the bottom a little bit. I'm going to push the light again. So like I said, I'm trying to go a little bit cooler. You know how my tendency is to make things a little too warm. And we're going to soften over here. I think that's almost there. Now, of course, this knuckle isn't that pink, so I'll let that fade. Really hope my camera didn't die, because I think that this is actually probably starting to look very, very good. And I got all the footage for the introduction of color into this hand. At least I'm hoping. Well, I guess you'll know by now, right? All right, it's kind of softened down here. I think this looks like a hand now. What do you think? Looks like a hand. So I looked at my camera, so it does look like we did get that footage, so that's good. But it was like a 13-minute long clip of me painting this area. So yeah, I'm just going to show you how I soften this, and then I'm going to move on to this hand. But of course, that's going to be off camera. Alright, so now we painted in the other hand. So pretty much just the fingers, really, the phalanges that you can see. I actually missed a spot over here, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover it. There. Okay, so yeah, I did the same kind of thinking as I did over here. into this onto these fingers, but again, it wasn't that long. I just wanted to get the flesh tone in, the average flesh tone of that area. Now for the drapery, for the clothing, I am pretty satisfied with the shape. I do think that that will take a lot more time to get into the drapery. So I think in the next session I'll probably do the perceptual color stage on the face, and then work these values out. And then in the finishing stage, maybe I'll glaze here and there, like some of the different tones on the dress. But I really don't think right now it would help me that much to put in the values for the dress. And I think that's going to be about it for today's episode. We covered quite a lot of ground on the canvas today. It did take quite a long time to get all of these shapes. And I did paint the knee. I forgot to mention, I painted the knee off camera. When I was painting in when I was painting in this arm, I painted the knee off camera just because, again, the length of the footage. I'm not really sure how long today's episode is going to be, but it'll be much longer if I keep on talking. That being said, always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity amongst all of us. I truly do hope that you have a wonderful day today, and I'll see you tomorrow. And it's now time for our new patron shout out. So thank you so much, Deborah Schulman, for becoming a patron to my Patreon account. It really, really, truly helps me out so much. I really do appreciate the support so much. I really am very thankful. That being said, I really hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.